Now that healthcare reform and the associated 18-month debate is behind us, Congress has immediately turned their attention to financial regulatory reform. Both parties are tossing accusations about what the bill will or won't do, and there's even disagreement within each party. Go figure. We touched on the proposal last week, but more details have emerged, and according to Joe Krier, the stakes are higher than most people think. He joins us now. He's president of Krier Wealth Management. Good morning to you.
Hi, Stacy.
So we know that this bill is trying to maybe ameliorate some of the things that we've all lived through financially these past couple of years, try to fix those things. What new items are we learning about now, Joe?
Yeah, and really there's two major dynamics here. One is the bill itself, and then the other is kind of the way that the healthcare legislation was pushed through. People are looking and saying, okay, is the financial regulatory reform bill going to be the same way, where we don't know everything that's in it until it's right upon us? But some of the key things there, and one of the main buzzwords is to regulate risk at the big banks. And they're trying to spread that out to all financial entities, whether it's a mortgage company or a financial advisor like myself.
Well, let's take a look at what they're proposing, because Chris Dodd is the main backer of this. They want to put in a risk regulator, try to get some financial stability. Is that something that can easily be done?
Absolutely not, because you know, who's to determine what risk is? You know, everybody's pointing fingers that everyone else created this whole problem out there in the financial system. So no one can even admit who created the problem. How are they going to determine what is defined as risk, quote unquote? They also want big banks to create a liquidation process so that if you know, they're failing, they can just the feds can push a button and say, okay, it's not too big to fail. Here's a systematic way to dissolve your bank without hurting the system.
They want a bank to come up with its own funeral plans.
Exactly, yeah. And they're obviously going to meet some resistance with this, because all entities think they're there to succeed, not to fail. So, and then, of course, consumer protection is really the buzzword that tries to get the voters on board. This is where there's more disclosure in things like mortgage underwriting and things like that, so people know what they're getting into when they're signing all those papers.
Well, aren't a lot of things stated in this bill kind of already underway? Didn't we expand consumer protection with the credit card changes that just went into effect?
Definitely, and one of the big things here is to try to pull it all together. You know, what they feel part of the problem is that there was too many different agencies doing pieces of this themselves, so what it did was it created seams and cracks for certain businesses to kind of work between the lines, and what they're trying to do is fuse all the rules together so that there's one broad program that covers consumers.
Okay, but with something so broad, of course, you have a lot of risks. What do you think those risks are?
Yeah, we do here, you know, and we're at an interesting point. I mentioned a minute ago about the way the health care bill went through, and I think that the Democrats had finally decided that, hey, it's better to get something done, even though it may not be popular by everybody, than it will be to get to election time next year and have the Republicans saying, look, they did absolutely nothing, even though they had all this power. So the problem here is if they do too much regulation, they're going to slow down economic recovery. You don't want to hinder banks that are just getting back on their feet. Also,
let me interrupt you. Are banks lending now?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet.
And, you know, I have a little bit of sympathy there, because, you know, they're rebuilding their balance sheets. They're dealing with an awful lot of issues that they've never seen before. And until they're stable, they don't want to lend money. If they have too much regulation, they're not going to lend money.
All right. And you also say one of the risks of reform is if they do too little, that'll weaken the Fed.
Absolutely. You know, you want the Fed to carry a big stick and hopefully never have to use it. That's a big part of it. And you've got to have cooperation between the parties. You got to have consumers happy about what's going on, so they're willing to borrow money to go spend it in the first place.
So overall, what are your thoughts on financial regulation? You know, a lot of people say if you do too much, it's just going to clamp things down. Like you said, it's kind of going to quell the spirit of capitalism. Is it greed and fear what drives the market?
You know, key words out there right now are transparency. The key word for me is simplicity. We've got too many pages to this legislation, and it's so vast, and yet it still has vagaries in it that can make someone like me have to jump through 8 more hoops to help my clients, and that's an issue. We just need simplicity. You know, people have talked for years about throwing out the IRS tax code and making it simpler. If we can get things basic, easy to understand, then it's better for everybody.
All right, Joe Krier, president of Krier Wealth Management. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Stacy.
7:22 now.